Okay. Hey, Barb.
Hi, Krista.
So here we are, part 3 of our Pro-D series for this school year for staff development. The title for today is Seeing Beyond Behavior. And the first time I heard this phrase was from Sydney Banks, and he would say that behavior is after the fact. He said it's too late. The damage is done. And this was in great contrast to what I'd been learning in the academic training of modifying behavior and making, detailed plans of how to modify behavior, which, as I said on one of the earlier talks, never worked for me. It didn't seem practical, feasible, and it never worked. So I was quite excited to hear this phrase of seeing beyond behavior. And how this plays out for me as a teacher is like this. If there's a child with challenging behavior, and I go to that child with negativity of whatever shape or form, I will make matters worse. So an alternate is to go to that child with the challenging behavior and feel compassion for that child. And, it's been 40 years since I first learned some of these truths, but still true today. And I struggle with the words because in a sense it's almost like magic. When I go to a child who's struggling, and it may be that I'm justified in being put off, because it might well be directed at me as the teacher. But if I go to that child with compassion and non-judgment, it's almost like magic in that because of the non-judgment, this is me trying to explain it, the child doesn't need to feel defensive, it seems. And the child, through that non-judgment, is able to clear his or her mind. And when their mind is clear, when they're not defending themselves, their own wisdom is able to come to light and unfold for them. That seems to be what happens. And then we are, as I said on one of the earlier talks, then there's that partnership. If that child, a child or a teen, a child or youth will feel so grateful if they're treated with empathy and compassion, and they begin to very quickly trust you, that you have their interests at heart. So it becomes actually quite, as we were saying earlier, keeping it simple, it actually becomes quite easy because we're not, it's a two-way interaction. I might be, I don't have to push that child towards success. Once they trust that I have their interests at heart, and they can feel that I see them as a whole human being, they join me, and together we make the plan, and together we're on the journey of learning and towards success. And it makes it quite simple because, of course, they're a bright, creative human being as well, just like me. And together we find the way for them to meet success.
It's interesting that when you say that it's difficult to find the words to use, I have always had a difficulty with this one. I can do it and I see it, but the only word that works for me is the word behold. And I know for some people it sounds like a religious word, but I honestly have never been able to find another. When you look at the wholeness of another person, you behold that which is sacred inside them. And in children and youth, you see that place in them that is innocent and beautiful. And it's the place from which they can grow And it's the place where we open up to them and they open up to us, and it puts us on that level playing field that you're talking about, where it allows things to happen. I always think back to something that Syd Banks said too, and it was about negative thoughts and feelings are like scratches on your spectacles. And if you're looking at a kid with scratches on your spectacles, you're not seeing who they really are. If you look at anybody like that, a staff member in your school or a parent, a difficult parent that comes in, it sets you up to have that negative kind of interaction. But if you can find in yourself a place where you see them in their wholeness, and here's that word again, behold who they are, then it changes everything. It changes the feeling, and it opens a door, and it takes everyone to a new place of relating. And it becomes like magic, like you said. It's like magic.
And in a school setting, it's interesting to me that it may not be my mandate to be speaking about wisdom at the time, or the different levels of learning. It may be that I'm working with a child who's struggling with math. It's that feeling that helps their wisdom come to light. And I find that I did find opportunities and would take opportunities to sometimes give them that little bit extra. And if you can share with a child, one of my favorite quotes out of Sydney Banks' Missing Link is about thought being like the rudder of a ship, and it guides you. And it's amazing how much impact that little bit of truth can have on a child, particularly the population I was working with, where they have a DSM-5 designation, or maybe several, where they understand that it's been documented and verified. Yes, you have a scattered mind. Yes, you're, this struggle, that struggle. And when a child realizes, you mean I have choice in which thoughts I'm paying attention to? No one's ever told me this. I would love to not lose my iPhone and my iPad and the keys to the car. I'd love to be successful with my courses and so on. You mean I have a choice? And that little bit of information can be life-changing, on how they all of a sudden see themselves as capable, as whole, as able to learn these things. Not to say there aren't things to learn. There are things to learn, but to know, I think what it is the difference between hopeless and hope. Yeah. It's documented, I have a scattered mind, I have whatever, ADD, ODD, whatever. And now someone is coming along, someone whom I trust, who I've shared a feeling with of trust, who's saying there is hope. And once that child feels that hope, there's really no stopping them. And that hope will spread when the families start to see, oh my goodness, there's success. And oh my goodness, they're actually getting to places. They're not losing things. They're actually taking charge of their own life. It's really remarkable what happens in those situations.
As you were speaking, I was thinking back to a young lad that I had a number of years ago, and I worked with younger kids than what Krista has worked with, and I think of this young boy who would not come into a school building, and he had had all kinds of sad things, abandonment issues, you name it, he'd had it happen to him, and he wouldn't come inside the school building. So my office was on the main floor, so I opened the window. And his parents would bring him, and I would talk to him through the window. And we did school through the window. And he started to come every week, and he began to come by himself. He was maybe 8 or 9 at that time. And what I noticed about him was that he could run like a deer. And I'd seen him swimming, and he could swim like an otter. So those were the things I talked to him about, because that was his passion. He could do it with ease, and I knew that's where he was in his comfort zone. So I went to where he was at, and that would be what we'd talk about. So I talked to him a bit about maybe he'd like to borrow a book from the library. So I got books of his interest. check them out through the school, my office window. And then eventually, after a number of months, he came inside. And he walked into the office and he said, "My body tells me when I am safe, and I can be safe here." And that changed everything.
Yeah.
And up till then, he'd had every diagnosis in the book, but because he felt that level of trust, we didn't talk about it. I didn't talk about him coming inside the door. We just went to that place where there was the mutual sharing and the love between us, and it opened a door for him. And he found a new world. And it was really quite a journey after that that we shared together. So,
what strikes me about that, Barb, is your acceptance of where that child was at. It's like, there's nothing to fix. We don't need to change you. I accept you for you where you're at now. And again, it's amazing what that does for someone when they're accepted in the moment and they can just feel at ease and feel safe, like you say. That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
I know it's all in innocence that people, you know, have done the behavior modification or tackling behavior. I mean, that's what's visible mostly.
Yeah.
And people are innocent and really do want to help youth. But I think we're really onto something with looking past behavior and seeing the dreams for these young people come true. Not it just in a way of, oh, I feel good, isn't that great, but my math scores still suck. No, in an authentic way that everybody can be pleased about. They feel good, yet they're also successful and on their way to being independent. Yeah.
And I think the whole, to sum it all up, is that there are no throwaway people. And that inside everybody is this wonderful place of wholeness. And the more that we in schools can go to that place ourselves and see that in others, we draw it out of them.
Yeah. Which makes me think of how Sid would often say, you can only build people up. And I think that's a tremendous honor to be a teacher and be able to build someone up. So thank you for joining us, and I think you'll enjoy part 3 of the Sydney Banks Long Beach lectures. Thank you.
Thank you.